Hey, everybody. Welcome to the pre-launch of Talk to Me Nice, the 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace. My name is Minda Hartz, and if you're new here, I'm a workplace consultant, and this is if you see it, my 4th book coming out next week, and we're doing a whole week of conversations pre-launching to the book. So I'm so happy you're here because you could be anywhere on the internet and you're here with me, you're here with us. And so we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. And so again, I'm just so happy that you're here. And I'm happy that I have my first guest who's a friend, Dr. Marisa G. Franco, New York Times bestselling author. She's going to tell you a little bit more about herself, but it's so funny because it's funny how things come full circle. I'm sitting in DC. I have a speaking engagement later today, and the first time I met Dr. Franco is in DC. She was the moderator for a conversation, a fireside chat for the memo, and it's just been awesome to see her put her thought leadership out in the world. And if you haven't had a chance to get her book, we're going to drop the links in the chat so that you can get that as well. And she was so kind to say yes to me, along with a great group of people the rest of the week. And so happy Monday. It's been a long time, y'all, since I've been on LinkedIn Live. You know, I used to do my every Monday, but self-care had to insert itself and I needed to take a little break. And so Mike, my co-pilot, is behind the scenes. And so again, we're happy to have you here. So we're going to bring my friend, my guest, and we're going to talk today about the trust language of sensitivity. I have 7 trust languages, and sensitivity is actually the first trust language because I feel like in our workplaces today, we need more humanity. We need more empathy. And if you feel the same, definitely put an amen in the chat. But we'll bring my friend up to the stage now.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Minda.
I am happy that you're here. And I'm going to I have to post a picture when we were both speaking at, I think was it the
MCC?
Texas? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we had our books and we took a cute picture together. But for those who might be hiding under a rock and they're not familiar with your work, will you tell more people about you?
Yeah, of course. So I am a friend expert, psychologist, speaker. I wrote the New York Times bestselling book, Platonic, How the Science of Attachment Can Help You Make and Keep Friends.
I know this is a side note, but we'll have to talk about it too. One of my shorts that's in festivals this summer is called The Distance Between, and it's all about how the highs and lows of friendship. I'll have to send you a private link so that you can read that. So anyway, I see people talking about grits. Yes, Dr. Franco, one of the questions that I always ask on my podcast is, I'm a grits with salt girl. How do you like to have your grits?
It's been a while since I've had grits. I have to think back to my grits memories and experiences. Yeah, I guess salt too.
Okay.
Salt too.
I was nervous. I was like, please don't say sugar. We were on a good.
Oh no. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
Definitely salt. Yeah.
Okay. We were connected, but my book comes out next Tuesday. So if you haven't had a chance to pre-order the book, I know you probably heard this 1,000 times listening, but pre-orders matter. So we're going to drop that in. And if you're not in a position to pre-order, call your local library. That matters too. So make sure that they're aware of Talk to Me Nice. And Dr. Franco, I wrote this book because I was tired of people telling me that they didn't trust their manager or they didn't trust their colleague or they didn't trust HR, which can be all valid experiences to why we don't trust. But when I thought about what they were really saying was that there was something missing. There was an expectation gap, a communication crisis that somebody might not have been aware. So yes, it might not be trust, but what's underneath it? Is it that you need more acknowledgement? You need more transparency? You need more sensitivity? And if you had one of these things, would that enhance trust in the workplace? So now there's an expectation that I have of you to provide me something in the workplace that you're not aware of, right? But it's eroding trust. So if we had the language to be able to talk about not just the grand acts of betrayal at work, but also those quiet moments, right? That the joke that said that, you know what, that was it at my expense, or could you have been a little more sensitive? And that's one of the languages that we're going to talk about today, is sensitivity. But before that, I would love for us both to just talk about, and I want those watching to drop their answer in the chat as well. But how do you define trust?
Trust is, I think, giving someone an opportunity to hurt you, and even giving someone the opportunity to hurt you, but I want to say trusting that they won't, but then I'm like, I can't include the word in the definition.
You
could. Yes, I think it's vulnerability, it's risk, it's exposure. It's it is giving someone the tools to hurt you, but being reassured or having faith. I'll say having faith that they won't take advantage of that.
I love that you said not take advantage of that, because we're all human, right? We're gonna erode trust intentionally, unintentionally. Those situations are gonna happen, because each of us, especially in the workplace, we have a scenario and we have to make a decision, and that decision is either gonna enhance trust with you or erode trust, right? And so trust for me is both a noun and a verb. Right? It has to be an action. It has to be a demonstration. It has to be something that somebody can tangibly see a difference being made. So even if I make the joke that was insensitive, I might have eroded trust with you, right? Whether I know it or not. But trust is when I give you the space to be able to say, you know what, that didn't sit well with me, and I just wanted to let you know. And me saying, oh, okay, now that I know that was offensive, I'm not going to do that again. Right? Yeah. Because I want to show you that I can joke without it being offensive to you. Right? And so I'm doing the thing that's going to enhance. And I'm wondering, have you ever experienced those insensitive moments in the workplace that sometimes we can't name, right? And you can't just go to someone and say, I don't trust you anymore because you said the thing. They're going to be defensive, right? And then that's going to just be a pitfall of mistrust. And so just curious, would love to hear your insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's like hard to even go back to those moments. My first job as a professor, I was the only Black professor, and acknowledging that I'm also very light-skinned, so I have a lot of privilege, but I still struggled a lot with how much my perspective deviated from everyone else's. And I think the hard part in being counseling psychology is people study diversity and they study inclusion, and they're still saying things like, I just remember faculty getting mad at Black students who had a reaction to this researcher who says, like, why do Black people still have high self-esteem despite discrimination? Is because they blame everything on discrimination. And so it was such a deficit-based model. It wasn't about faith, hope, spirituality, religiosity. It was, you just blame everything on discrimination. That's why you feel good about yourselves. And there's just like a bunch of like microaggressions like that, or they would say like, these Black students aren't integrating as much. And I'm like, well, they're in a predominantly white environment and they're the only one. And maybe like we need to have more understanding on what that's like. And I think they were communicating on a meta level, both about the students and about me. Like as one of the, I was like, okay, this is what you think about it when like, you get some feedback and you shut it down and you blame it on the students. Like, what does that mean for me when I have feedback for you? And that was a very lonely and isolating experience. And I could have used Minda's book at that time because I think I just shut down and internalized it, which is hopefully not what I would do anymore.
Oh, I thank you for sharing that. And I think it's when you're not in somebody else's shoes, it's those moments where we could be more sensitive, right? What would it have looked like for those professors to say, wow, you know what? Two things can be true at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. I might have these thoughts that may or may not be valid, but what are the experiences? And could I be more culturally sensitive to this moment, to their experience, right? Because me just saying whatever I want to say about it is eroding trust with you, with the students, right? And now we feel like we can't even have a conversation because you're not listening, right? And I find that often we just need to be speaking a language in which we both understand that's rooted in humanity. And I have told countless times this story, but it still rings true, is I had a manager and he saw that I had on burnt orange fingernail polish and he said, you people love your bright colors, right? And he jokes around for 15 minutes about how Black people like bright colors to the only Black person there. And so at the time I was like, I don't trust this man. He definitely doesn't have my best interest at mind. He probably doesn't see me as a leader. Like, I was going down the rabbit hole, rightfully so, right? But when I kind of take a step back from all those years later, I'm like, yes, he was wrong for saying that. But what was even worse is I didn't have the language to be able to address him, right? Yep. And so, to your point, we just kind of get stuck and then we just sweep it under the rug. But this whole time, it's impacting my mental health about how I'm viewing him. And I'm like, you know what? We need the language to be able to talk about these moments, right? And so when I thought about it, I'm like, he lacked sensitivity. His intention, I don't think he showed up that day, Dr. Franco, and said, how can I erode trust with Minda today? Right? I don't think that's what he did, right? But it happened. And had I had the language to say, you know what, I need him to be more culturally sensitive when he's saying these jokes. And maybe had he heard that from me, he would have stopped from saying those jokes to me and others. I'm sure he's probably saying those same jokes because nobody's ever had a conversation with him, right? To be able to do that, right? So it's being more sensitive. You know, yeah, we're just playing around and we want the jokes, but think about how the decision to tell that joke, how it impacts somebody else, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think people don't realize, you know, I'm writing a book on security and I have this chapter on stigma, and it's making me think about how, like, you know, when you feel stigmatized, you then begin to constantly evaluate and police yourself. Like, oh, am I wearing the right nail polish? How is my hair? You know, it expands so much beyond that moment where you're no longer a being who is present, but now you're constantly analyzing yourself for whether you're affirming the stereotypes, whether you're not. And so it just has ramifications far beyond the moment that it occurs. And I think people, if you only see it from your mindset, like, oh, I was just making a joke, and you don't understand what that's like to go through, what that brings up in people far beyond that moment. And also when there's sensitivity issues related to identity, they hit us so much harder than when it's related to something else, right? That's what we see in the research. For example, like bullying related to race or sexual orientation related to poorer mental health than bullying that doesn't reference those identities. And so there is a certain fraughtness to it. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, or people need to be educated on that when they expect, why are you having this big reaction? Because generations of people like me have had this vulnerability. It's not just this moment, it's what it represents more broadly.
Absolutely. And the language, even the reason why I created the trust language around sensitivity and the importance of that in the workplace, and we were joking about it before we went live, is it's not that I want to wrap everybody in a blanket and put a bottle in their mouth and then, you know, soothe everyone. No, it's about respect, right? It's bringing humanity, dignity, and respect. And we don't want to say things or have behaviors that strip people of their dignity in the workplace. You know, having thick skin's not on the job description, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't really believe in thick skin, actually. I think people that are the most resilient are able to validate and acknowledge and have compassion for their own feelings. It's like they go in and out of pain relatively quickly versus they never feel pain. Like, I think to never feel pain is to like lose a part of our humanity.
I love that. I'm curious too, as we kind of continue on with this language of sensitivity, is why do you think it's so important right now that we're more sensitive to certain things in the workplace? And I know a lot of your relationship, I'm sure even with friendships and relationships outside of it, just being sensitive to how people feel and think, to your point, even when they may not think and feel the same we do about certain things, right?
Yeah. I think it's because this tear, it's cumulative. And so when society is a little less, controversial things are happening less, right? Then when you make that offhanded remark, it's not like, oh, I have this offhanded remark and this other thing also happened and this other thing also happened, this other thing happened in the news, right? So we get outside what's called our window of tolerance, which is like the kind of range of experience in which we're regulated more easily when it's sort of like cumulatively happening all around us. And so that's why right now, I think it's particularly important to be sensitive because people are more vulnerable, like when things are happening in many layers at the same time.
Well said. That's so important. And for all those managers or HR professionals, one thing that I would say is that it's important for us to be culturally sensitive right now. If you're one of those people that say, I don't watch the news anymore, I don't read the papers, or what, I don't get on TikTok, wherever you are to get your news, I would encourage you to not completely plug out, because you need to be understanding of what some of your team members, some of your colleagues are doing, so that you don't say the thing and do the thing, because we can no longer rely on, or I didn't mean any harm, or you took it the wrong way. These are things that trust isn't just nice to have at work, it's a business imperative. And when trust is present, the research says that we're 21% more productive, right? We're 40%, we experience 40% less burnout, and there's 50% more retention. And so if I know that having low trust environment is going to impact that, then I should be aware of, me wearing a certain hat to work, or me saying the joke about what's going on in the world, like to a certain community, right? That is not going to land well, and you're not going to get the best out of your staff.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap things up, I just want to know if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the chat. We have time to share any comments. But when we think about the cost, what is the cost associated with not having more sensitive colleagues or managers or HR, right? Understanding that when I come to you with a grievance, I don't want to have to come to you a year later because nothing's happened, right? Or that you didn't take my thoughts and feelings and experiences seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think when people are willing, like this is something I talk about in conflict and friendship, like it's kind to bring it up, because then you can address the problem. And if the problem never gets addressed because people don't trust you, then they start shutting down. They start planning their exit. They have 1 foot out, 1 foot in. They're like, I don't like this place. Why should I spend extra time working here? Right? Like you get sort of when you aren't making other people feel that sense of your humanity, they become half human too, in terms of like their ability to show up and be productive and be engaged and be cooperative. And so that's why I feel like that trust is so important, that ability to say, like, I think sometimes when someone speaks up, someone who maybe has not read your book might think, they should get over this. This isn't a big deal, rather than realizing that the alternative isn't they get over this. The alternative is they're still upset about this. And now they feel like there's nothing that they can do to change the situation. And that eventually their only option is to depart. Right. And it's not, them getting over this is the alternative solution. The alternative is they now are trying to navigate this on their own, and you don't have a say in how that will go. Right now, you have an opportunity to clear the air, to work on this together, to bring them back. That is a gift. You will lose that gift if you erode trust.
Whew, I wish I had my tambourine, because that was the mic drop moment, that tambourine moment, because there is a cost when trust isn't present, right? There is a cost when we're not hearing people out. Again, I know many of us will say, or we've been in a situation where trust is eroded, or we've done the eroding, right? And we don't want to have any accountability. And even if you do say the thing and the joke that you wish you could reel back in, it's how you recover, right? Trust is not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle, right? Because we're all going to make a mistake. One thing I wanted to read to everybody was a quote that I use in the chapter of sensitivity, Emotions Matter. And it's by Nelson Mandela. And it says, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And when we're not practicing the language of sensitivity in the workplace, we are essentially keeping people from not experience true freedom in the workplace. Right. And there is a cost. And so I want each of us to go throughout our day and think about, how can I be more sensitive? Right. I was somewhere recently, and somebody said, made a joke about, I'm going to call ICE on them. Right.
Oh, no.
I know that they were joking. Right. But that's not a culturally sensitive joke to make at a time like this. Right. How does that impact someone? You had trust with someone at 10 a.m. and you say that joke that you just thought maybe would lighten the mood, or whatever the reason was, and it erodes trust. And now anybody maybe that is impacted by that in their community, or even just an ally or whomever, now everybody's looking at you a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second, right? So, but I want to say, when we say the crazy thing, or we say the off-putting joke, or we do something that we shouldn't, there is a way to apologize, and there is a way to course correct. And I'm curious, from your work, when friends, even, because we consider ourselves workplace friends, we say those things, right?
Yeah.
How do we get back on track when we haven't said the sensitive or done the sensitive thing?
It's hard. It's hard. I will say, I think a lot of times, especially people from marginalized groups, don't feel comfortable bringing up when something has hurt them, because there is a history of people kind of denying and invalidating your feelings and making you feel like something's wrong with you. And so I think, as allies, or people who, are trying to do our best but screw up, we can be proactive about saying, I was thinking about that joke that I made this morning, and I realized how hurtful it could have been. And I wasn't thinking in that moment. And so I wanted to follow up with you and see, like, if there are any reactions or feelings that you had. Like, I want to be able to listen to them. And I think, especially when there's a power dynamic, knowing that people that have less power face more repercussions if the conversation doesn't go well, the more that we can be proactive and say, like, check in. Hey, is there anything I've been saying or doing that hasn't sat well with you? Like, I would want to know how to be better to you. And I know it can be scary to say these things, but I want you to know that there's never going to be any backlash or retaliation. I'll just be really happy to hear it.
Absolutely. And those are some of the tools and tips that I give in the book for managers or colleagues when we say the thing, because we're going to say or do the thing, right?
Say the thing.
We're going to say the thing. And it's because I know, for me, if I go back in my DeLorean Back to the Future to that manager that made the statement about my nail polish, had he come back to me and said, you know what, Minda, I was thinking about what I said the other day, and I was trying to be like I was at the Apollo, but I realized that might not have come off that way, and I apologize. I shouldn't have made a joke like that. I won't do that again. The 24-year-old, 23-year-old me would have been like, oh, okay, well, maybe he isn't as bad as I thought, right? And I can maybe trust. We can start to rebuild a relationship, because I feel like if trust can be broken, it can be rebuilt by certain behaviors, right? And I wish that I would have had that moment with him, but I also wish that I would have had the language at the time to address it, because it wasn't the only comment he made. He would make them every day.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Minda.
Right? So, but I wish that I had been empowered to do that in a way that maybe might have let him know what good looks like to me. And that's what I want people to understand, that how do we have a productive conversation? It's less about trust issue, and it's a communication crisis. So if I can communicate to you that I don't like those kind of jokes, right? You might say, you know what? Okay, I hadn't considered that. And now I'm going to be more aware the next time I do that. And if I do say the joke again, knowing that impacts you, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah, sure. No, you're right. That would have made all the difference. I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a friend recently, and this friend, her body has changed kind of rapidly. She's put on some weight, and she showed me pictures of her when she was younger, and this like kind of collage she did with a friend. There was one where she was in India and she had a sari, and her friend had a sari, and I was like, oh my God, you look so beautiful in that picture. And later she told me, like, you looking back at those pictures and calling me how beautiful I was when I was like at a smaller size, it hurt my feelings. Like, it brought up stuff around how I don't look like that anymore and I don't feel as beautiful. And I was like, thank you so much for telling me. I never want to make you feel that way. Like, and I could totally understand how you would feel that way. It almost makes me emotional now, because I'm like, she was so brave to bring that up. And I think she made me so much better. Like, fundamentally, when we put our egos aside, we care about each other and we don't want to hurt each other. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind when someone tries to address an issue with us. They're giving us an opportunity to be less hurtful. And all of us want that when we're not first stuck in our, oh my God, I'm bad. Are you telling me I need to be ashamed of myself? Right? Yeah. Like, the larger goal is like, we do want to love and be in community with each other.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think we've all been in a similar situation, right? Where we've said something that we thought was uplifting and helpful and all the things. And then, but to your point, the courage it takes for someone to come to us and say, feedback, it can be a gift, right? And when we receive it that way, to say, it took courage for that person to tell me where I made a misstep. And now that I know this, I don't have to make that misstep again. And now I'm aware of it. So I want everybody to think about when somebody tells them something, to take a beat, that the first place we go isn't, I'm a bad person, put myself in the corner, you know, and demonize ourselves, but say, what can I learn from this? Yes, that wasn't my intention, but now I get to demonstrate, going back to the noun and the verb, how to rebuild trust, right? And then they don't have to be anxious when they see me or show me a picture or say something to me again, right?
Exactly. And I think it also requires us to be able to acknowledge that it's okay that all of us have a different sense of reality. Because I think a lot of the times in American culture, it's one sense of reality is valid, and that's the sense of reality of the group that has the most power, right? And so for me, as someone who I guess is you know, has a body that's perceived in society as more valued, that I could easily say, well, that I wouldn't care about a comment, so why could you? But like, we're not the same people. This person can have a different opinion, and that doesn't mean anyone's right or wrong. Like, you can be hurt by whatever you're hurt by. We all have different brains. We all have different nervous systems. And the more that we assume that people must be just like us and see the world just like I do and have the same reactions that we do, it's sort of like a hegemony of like subjective experience, which is just unfair and frankly just incorrect, right? And also limits the beauty of the diversity that exists, that I have an opportunity to understand that the way that I comes off very differently. And I want to know that. I want to know that when I recognize that the diversity that's inherent to us existing.
Oh. Yes. Listen, I want to end on this from what you said is, I think we're all in this situation. We get an opportunity to talk to each other nice, right? And to listen, because it, just as someone takes courage for us to tell somebody something, or the power dynamics in the workplace, it's also, let's be courageous listeners to hear people out, right? And learn from that. Recently, I was in a situation with somebody was telling me something, and I didn't take it as such a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. And they said to me, well, if this happened to you, how would you feel? And I said, I wouldn't feel a way about it. I'd be fine, right? And I kind of dismissed the situation, right? And now that I'm thinking about the language of sensitivity, I'm like, oh, this was an opportunity for me to be like, you know what? I might not have reacted in the same way, but I can understand why this bothers you, right? Exactly. And it's the empathy, right? It's the humanity that we get to show each other to make the space better for everybody. You know? Okay. Listen, the book comes out next Tuesday. Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace. If you haven't got the book, please do that. We're also going to drop Dr. Franco's information to book her, hire her, buy her book, support her, follow her here on LinkedIn. Share this conversation. We'll post on LinkedIn and YouTube when we're done. So share it with someone, because I'm sure that they could benefit from the language of sensitivity. Before we leave, Dr. Franco, any final parting words to our people who are watching us live and will watch us later on today?
Yeah, I mean, I love your work, Minda. It pushes at, you know, I just think there's such deep work that you are referring to, which is like the deep work of like knowing that we don't have to be ashamed of ourselves. And I think your approach, it's so empathic to all parties. And it's kind of reminds me of like a restorative justice approach that like, hey, we're all going to screw up. And that's part of being human. Like we're all good-ish, right? And that's okay. And you can repair and you can come back from that. And I feel like you have such a message of hope, which is at the foundation of trust, right? Trust is to say, I have hope that we can be in a better place than we are right now.
Yes, because if we're being more sensitive at work or in our daily lives, then we're actually solving for some of these other issues that people say are bad to solve right now, right? Because we're rooting it in humanity. And so thank you for always seeing me. Thank you for being so supportive. And I hope that we have more conversations like this in the future. And everybody stay connected to us. And tomorrow you can find us right here. I'll be with Doug Melville, and we'll be talking about another trust language. So I hope you'll be with us tomorrow at 9 a.m. if you're on the East or the West Coast, and then noon on the West. So we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.